Good evening, technicians, and welcome to another episode of the Smartwatch. Now, I'm so happy that you decided to continue on with the series. If you have seen the last episode, you know that we've set up a virtual machine and we've installed Ubuntu. Now, in this episode, we're going to pick up exactly where we left off. We're going to jump into that Ubuntu machine and start installing some development dependencies. And I'm very excited to get going, so let's do this. Alright, so full disclosure, I don't remember what we did last time. So let's do a really quick recap. Sip some coffee first, maybe get that bowl rolling. Alright, I think I'm good to go. Let's do this. Last time we visited a website, a very nifty website called google.com. We went and looked for Ubuntu, in case you haven't seen the last video. Ubuntu is a Linux distribution. We downloaded Ubuntu. We also went to VMware or VirtualBox, depending on what you want to go with. My personal favorite is VMware, Workstation Player, and we downloaded the Workstation Player for Windows. Mac and Linux are also available if you're using those. Alright, that's a quick recap. From there, we installed the operating system on the virtual machine, or we created a virtual machine that contains the operating system. I'm getting ahead of myself. And we configured it, and now it's working. Right, let's boot it up. Is it gonna be fast? Let's find out. And we are back. All right, so here is the ultra secure virtual machine that contains our Linux distribution. Enter my password and we are in. Now, while it boots up, Linux is a very versatile operating system. It gives you a lot of flexibility, it gives you a lot of freedom. And what you would want to do with Linux is be very careful when you're running commands, but always keep in mind that if you do make a mistake or delete a file that you shouldn't delete, or for some reason destroy the whole thing, you're in a virtual machine, just, do it all over again. It's all good. All right. More coffee. Right. So first thing we're going to do is hit up our terminal. Maximize that so you guys can see. Give it a little bit of zoom. Oh, come on. Give me a little more. All right. There we go. This should be good. Cool. This is something that I recommend to everyone when they first start off in Linux. Try to go through some of the basic commands. These could be found online. These could be found in the help section of your terminal. There's so much that you can learn just by heading up the documentation. We're not going to look through all of this over here. This is on you to kind of upskill yourself and to research and get better. And don't try to rush it. Don't try to memorize the commands. It'll just come to you. You'll be using them on a daily basis, and you'll just memorize them. All right, cool. First command we're going to run is sudo apt update. It's going to ask us for a password, and our password is there. All right. Now, what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to explain a few things. Let's talk about this part over here. The sudo command. See, the sudo command is it basically tells the terminal that we want to act as an administrator. All right. And this would allow us to kind of have elevated privileges when we're running commands like update or upgrade, or when we're deleting a file that we're not supposed to delete. With that said, it is important that when you do run the sudo command, be very careful about the syntax that you're running. Be very careful about the spelling of things, or if you're removing a file, or if you're just take it easy, take a breather, read what you're doing, understand what you're doing. Sudo it can be a very dangerous thing to do. All right. Apt basically is Ubuntu's package manager. This is where you kind of reach out to a server and tell it, give me the updates that I need to install. And we're telling it that we want updates by. So basically what this translates to is, as an administrator, I want apt to get me the updates. And that's exactly what it did. So it first asked us, are you really an administrator? Prove it. We entered the password. Great. It says, yes, you are an administrator. Sorry for the inconvenience. Here are the updates. Reading package list, building dependency tree, reading information state, and there are 103 packages that can be updated. Great. So now it's also telling us run apt list -- upgradable to see them. You can, if you want to. For the sake of this tutorial, I'm not really going to get into it. I'm just going to go with sudo apt upgrade. And I completely obliterated that command. There we go. All right, sudo apt upgrade. It's saying that it needs 428 megabytes of archives, 546 after we're done. Now, if you remember, in the last tutorial, we gave it enough space to do these updates. However, if and when you do run out of space, if you end up using this on a daily basis, or you end up installing a lot of applications and saving a lot of files, you may find yourself short on space. This is where you would want to start thinking about either moving the whole virtual machine into a bigger space, and there are ways of migrating it, or installing Ubuntu on a separate boot drive, or even potentially just upgrading the virtual machine itself. There are ways for you to, from the settings menu where we set it up, you can increase the size. All right. So for this command, yes, I do want to upgrade. And what we did now in this command is we told the terminal that we are administrators, and it remembered us because we already set our password. And we want apt to perform the upgrade based on the update that it got before. So that's exactly what it's doing. This is going to take a while. So yeah, more coffee. All right, tacticians, I wanted to kind of have a little small intermission with you guys. Updates are still being performed, so it's taking a bit of time. In the meantime, however, I figured that we might get into what are the dependencies that we're going to need as a full stack developer. Now, there are a number of frameworks that you could be working in. Some of the popular ones are the MERN framework, which stands for Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node. You could be a Jamstack developer, so you might outsource or kind of utilize a number of different tools, low-code tools or no-code tools, to build that back-end logic, and then potentially either code the front-end layer on its own, or use an existing template, or whatever the case may be. You know, development is very flexible. Development gives you a lot of freedom to build things however you see fit. In this series, though, we're going to go through a slightly more popular approach. We're going to follow the niche market. We're going to follow the niche market, and this is something that has been tried and true. It has been used several times over by giant organizations and by big applications. So the stack that we're working with, and I realize that I may have given it a bit of a long introduction. So the stack that we are going to be working with is called MERN. MERN stands for Mongo Express React Node. And let's kind of bring up these websites now. Okay, so before we go through the documentation and before we kind of get a little bit deeper into what these different technologies are, I wanted us to kind of walk through a typical applications flow. It'll help both me explain it to you guys and you to kind of understand where I'm coming from and where all of us are coming from, or where we're going. That was a bit dramatic. Yeah. Anyway, here's a whiteboard. Let's do this. Quite simply put, we have a number of layers. The blue layer is going to be our database. We'll call it MongoDB. All right. That's the first layer, and that's where all of the data is stored. Data 1, data 2, you get it. All right. Cool. Of course, we all know the beautiful user interface that everyone loves, and it's usually built in something like ReactJS. ReactJS is a very fun framework. It gives you a lot of flexibility. It allows you to do things that were typically, I wouldn't say they were impossible, but they would take a lot of time and a lot of effort in the past. So the nice people at Facebook went and created an open source framework. It's actually not really a framework, it's a library. And maybe down the line we'll explain the differences, but for the sake of this video, just remember, and this is a very common mistake, React is not a framework, it's a library. And the difference between the two is a framework is a lot more extensive. However, it doesn't mean that React is not powerful. React is very useful for the front-end developer. It allows you to create components and states and routes and hooks, and I am talking gibberish at this point, so I'm not going to get more detailed into it until we actually see how it all works. Just know that here is where our UI is created. And then we have the third layer in our 3-tier application. And let's make this yellow. Ooh, no, that's not going to be clear. Green should be fine. Yeah, all right. The third layer is, you guessed it, NodeJS. NodeJS is the backend environment. And funny enough, just a little fun fact for you guys, ReactJS has Node.js under the hood. So it's kind of, that's really the beauty of it here. When you're working in the MERN stack, you're actually working in one environment. And that's pretty cool, because if you know JavaScript, you can program the user interface, you can program the backend logic, and you can tie it all together. You might be asking yourself at this point, what about Express? Where is it? Here's where it gets cool. So we know that the user interface is over here, right? Now, the user interface wants to communicate with the backend. It wants to tell it, I have this page, but I don't have any data to populate it with. So it looks nice, but I can't really do anything with it. What am I supposed to do? We know that the data is stored in this layer. So the UI goes and sends a, let's say, I would say a message. It would send a request. And it would tell, hey, backend, what gives? Where's my data? Node.js says, I don't understand this person. So that's where Express comes in. Express is, you can think of Express as the translator. React, maybe React Native, maybe Flutter, the different user interface technologies or user interface frameworks and libraries that are out there, they're going to communicate in different languages. Express's job is to understand all of these languages and tell its boss, Node, that here is what they want. Send it to them. So the UI will send the request, Express will understand it, send it to Node, Node will send the response, and Express will send it back to the UI. And that's not all. What about the data? This is where Mongo comes in. Node can fetch data right from Mongo and send it back. So all of your nifty, let's take a simple example. Let's say we have a note-taking application. Your notes are stored over here, right? And what sends and receives these notes is this right here. And what displays the notes is this right here. That's a typical flow. So I know that I may have rambled on for a while, and I just wanted to give you a typical applications flow before we dive right in. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee. And we're gonna take a quick look at what the different application components, or if you wanna call them application layers, actually look like and what they actually do. So here's MongoDB. As we mentioned earlier, Mongo is the database that we're using. It's a document-based database, which means all of your data is stored in objects, and these objects are written in something called JSON. That's the formatting that they have. Anytime you see these nice little curly brackets over here, inside of a database, of course, think JSON, right? Now, if you want to go through this on your own time, go ahead. There isn't much information on the landing page. However, it just kind of gives you, there we go, access to the documentation where everything you might want to learn is stored. For the sake of this tutorial, however, and to not make it 10 hours long, I'm just going to say this. If you're familiar with databases, you know the popular MySQL. You may have heard of the different services out there by stuff like Amazon, which has DynamoDB, or Google Cloud, or any of the other ones. Document databases are very popular now because they're very fast. They're very secure, and they're easy to work with. JSON makes it easy to send and retrieve data, and that's why something like MongoDB, specifically in this framework, works really well. However, I wanted you guys to know that you're not stuck or tied into any of these. You can change any layer you want, and that's the beauty of having a stack. You can build your own stack. You can take out Mongo, bring in MySQL, take out React, bring in Angular, take out Node altogether and use a PHP server. It doesn't matter. Whatever you're familiar with, if you have prior experience, go for it. However, if you don't have prior experience, stick along. Let's just see where we get to, all right? So we've established that MongoDB is the database, Express is the translator, and Express is really just a kind of, you can think of it as a plugin that lives inside of Node.js. And Node.js, we said it's the brains of the operation. It's basically the big boss on the scene. It tells everyone what to do, and it listens to their feedback whenever necessary, all right? Then you have React. React is the pretty lady who just joined the scene. Well, that's not accurate. It's been around for a while. Developed by the nice people at Facebook. And I use the word nice people loosely. React is kind of, it's a library that allows you to do so much with less code, with more freedom than before. So before, if you wanted to program a very complex user interface that has different states and different hooks and routes, and it used to be a mess. React kind of tried to simplify the process a bit. Of course, it has some shortcomings. It has some difficulties here and there, but it's very popular. A lot of complex applications use it, and it kind of simplifies UI development. I'm spending a lot of time on React because, let's face it, it's the first thing that your users are going to see, and we're going to be spending a lot of time in React. Node, Express, and Mongo know what they need to do. React gives you basically whatever you want. You can tell it to look the way you want it to look, behave the way you want it to behave. Of course, they all work together hand in hand, and you will have to kind of build whatever you want to build in the backend as well. But the backend logic is kind of simple. You know that A plus B equals C. The UI is subjective. You might like something, you might like a menu bar vertical, others might like it horizontal. The colors, the behavior of the screen. There's so much that you can do. So I think I'm gonna wrap up this section, and I'm gonna say that that's the MERN stack. The more we talk about it, the more we get into it, the easier it's gonna become. And we're off to a pretty good start here, all right? Let's go check in on our friends over at Ubuntu. Let's type in the password again. Oh, look at that, it's done. All right, cool. How do we get started? Well, first, we boot up another browser. Wait, I made a mistake. First, we take some coffee. What am I talking about? All right, let's go. MongoDB install Ubuntu. And that's how I normally Google, by the way. I just talk to the browser. Sometimes I even yell at the browser. It usually works out, though. All right. Oh, no. There's nothing useful there, so I'm just gonna go back. I'm gonna say MongoDB install Ubuntu, not your website. Give me the community edition. There we go. And here's the documentation, and here are the commands we're gonna need. Here's a nice thing that you guys need to know. always consider that any application you're going to install is going to require something called dependencies, and dependencies are other applications that your application might depend on. So on this, here are the commands. We hit this copy, we hit the paste. I will explain this quickly to you guys. wget, basically think of it as a download. So instead of going to the website, hitting the download button, wget goes to the link and retrieves whatever file is at that link. And sudo apt key add is telling the operating system that we trust this URL, give it a certification key, or allow it to kind of download that file, right? We're here gonna hit enter. It's asking us for a password because we went with sudo apt key get. Did I type it correctly? Oh, all right, cool. Is that okay? That means it's fine. Cool. So we added this server ASC. Now we're gonna go with sudo apt install genenupg. It's already installed. All right, cool. Once installed, we try importing the key. That's fine. We don't really need to do that because we imported the key correctly. I did not notice. I seem to be biting my words. I should be paying more attention to what commands I'm writing. All right. Cool. Let's see. Install Mongo packages. Sudo apt-get install y mongo-org and paste. Hit enter. Unable to locate. So that didn't work. All right. I was not wrong then. 20.4, that's what we're running. Create file for focal. Alright, so I guess we imported the key, we did not create the file, that's fine. Apt-get update. Gonna update the package list. I think, yeah, alright. I probably should slow down. And by the way, guys, I want you to know that all of this is unscripted. And the reason why I'm keeping it unscripted is exactly for what just happened. I want you to see my mistakes. I want you to go along this journey with me. I've done this hundreds of times. And a lot of the times I don't even have to think about these things anymore. But we're developers. Our main goal is to get something to work. So whether we do it step by step, we follow a video tutorial, we find information on resources like Stack Overflow or Reddit or any other website, it's all good. Mistakes will happen and they will continue to happen. And with every mistake, you will learn. Something that I've read online before, and I don't remember where I read it, but you don't learn from your success. You learn from your mistakes. I think it was, yeah, cliche as it may be, but that's fine. It is true after all. We do not learn from succeeding and succeeding and succeeding. You might learn along the way, sure, but it's the mistakes that stick with you. And that's pretty much it. Moving on. Let's see. What did we do? Hit up, sudo, and that's a nice way of checking the last command. You just hit up on the keyboard, you'll see the last command you ran. Sudo apt-get install Mongo. So now we go Mongo db-v. Did not find it. All right, cool. It's fine. Let's see. Optional. Prevent unintended upgrades. Okay, so basically here it's telling us that there are ways of you to prevent unintended updates, and you know, this is very important when you're dealing with databases, because a database upgrade that is unintentional might break, might result in loss of data, might result in you corrupting the whole database. Now, there are ways of mitigating that risk, and we're going to get into them in future videos. Suffice it to say that instead of doing all of this locally, and of course you are developing locally, so you would want to, but your development database would be local, but your production database should always be someplace that's secure, someplace that you trust. You could use MongoDB's own cloud services. You could have it on its own server on AWS or Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure or Ionos or any of the popular hosts out there. Right, run Mongo Community Edition. Let's see, how do we do this? All right, so sudo systemctl start mongod. And it's going to ask us to install mongod, by the way, because we did not. Or maybe we did. Mongod-v. Oh, all right. So it seems to have installed it. That's awesome. Right, let's clear the screen. Mongo should be running. Status mongo, let's make sure. Sudo systemctl status mongo. All right, server is running. Now, since we're on this point, I want you guys to try to not copy paste commands anymore. I know this is something that we always try to do. We want to take the fast way, and I've been doing that myself in this video. Now, the more familiar you get with the terminal, you'll be able to identify what commands do what. So when I read sudo systemctl status mongo, I know that I'm telling the system control manager, show me the status of mongo. So I know that it's a safe command to run. It's fine. I've done it a million times. It's okay. At the start, try to type out the commands first and foremost so that you would memorize them. So in case you want to do something like sudo, I don't know, cd/opt, and then ls, and then clear, and then you kind of get into the habit of typing out the commands in the beginning so that you would have them memorized over time. And of course, this is all up to you guys. So you can do it that way. You can just copy paste them, read them, and make sure that you know what you're doing, and just go for it, because everything is kind of explained in documentation, so it's fine. Right, so next is sudo systemctl enable mongo, and what this command does, it does exactly what it said. It created a symlink between the target service and the systemd service. Translation to English. It's basically telling the operating system that every time you reboot, start mongo, which stands for MongoDB, right? Cool. As needed, you can stop mongo by issuing the following command. That's fine. Restart by doing restart, and they're basically just going through all of the different steps. Begin using mongosh. Let's see what that does, because that's not a command I've ever used before, by the way. All right, cool. So we kind of booted into the MongoDB server. I want to show you a different way of doing this, because while it is nice to work in the terminal a lot, and you will be working in the terminal a lot, you kind of have to take shortcuts where possible, and you kind of have to find your own workflow and speed it up. I'm gonna jump back into my Windows machine, and I'm gonna hit Windows, go to MongoDB Compass, and show you guys what it looks like to connect to a local database. There we are. So in this is a locally running database. It's for an application that is in development. Over here you can see the different collections that you have. Let's take a look at the logs, for example. Take a look at the posts. All right. So every single one of these, this is the JSON formatted table that we spoke about before, the JSON format data that's stored inside of these collections. Every one of these folders is a collection. Every one of these JSON pieces is an object, and that's pretty much it. I highly recommend that you use MongoDB Compass. It's a free application developed by the MongoDB team. I think it's available for Linux, I'm not sure. But yeah, definitely get into it because it helps a lot. It's definitely available for Mac and Windows. So if you are developing in Mac and Windows, there you go. Great. So we have MongoDB installed. We know it's working. Next, we're going to go to Node.js. Now, Linux, and let's hope I'm not wrong about this. Linux usually, yep, there we are. Unix usually has Node.js installed by default. This might differ if you're using a different flavor, or if you are using a different version than I am. But you can check if you have it installed by running Node.js-v. You should also have npm-v. npm is not installed. There we go. So sudo apt install npm. Let me tell you a bit about npm. npm is Node's way of installing modules. They're called Node packages. So you might be developing a, let's go back to the example we did earlier. You might be developing a note-taking application, and you want this application to be able to store, let's say, video links. You could potentially program a field that tells it input a video link over here and then show me a preview of this video underneath it. And that's going to take you some time, but it's definitely possible. Or you could go and look if there are any plugins for Node that do that for you. And if you remember earlier, I mentioned that ReactJS as a library is based off of Node, and it has Node under the hood. So that means you will find NPM packages for React. Let's say you want to implement single sign-on, which basically means that you want to have a sign-in with Google button, for example. You will find a NPM package. Let's do a quick test over here. React SSO, which stands for single sign-on, NPM. There we go, React SSO NPM. Hit that, and it's going to show us how do we install this package. NPM install React SSO, and here's a nifty example of how it can be used. All right, get familiar with NPM. It's a great resource. It's a beautiful community-driven environment where everything in it is open source. Sure, maybe there are some stuff that aren't, but the majority are. And you will find a lot of useful things. Now, be careful what packages you are installing, and be careful how you're using them. Read through, check the reviews, check the last update. Are they maintained? There's a lot that you need to kind of be aware of as a developer while working, and it's important to keep an eye out on the dependencies and the sizes and how things work. Now, just because something is old doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but try to find the most recent versions of whatever you're trying to look for. It'll save you a lot of headache, trust me. Cool. That's NPM. When we start using it, you'll see how useful it is. For the time being, what we did right now is we have Node installed. We're installing NPM, which is basically going to allow us to create a Node server and install plugins for it. Cool. After that is done, we are going to install ReactJS, and since we've already done Mongo, that's going to be the last step. Now with ReactJS, while that finishes installing, React, I want the English version. Right. So React is very easy to get up and running in React. Right? Hit the get started button. Scroll down a bit. I highly recommend that you read through the documentation. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. There's so much that you can learn from just reading the docs, specifically if you're just starting out. Now, with React, they automatically provide you with a template that you start off with, a bare bones way to create a React application. And they have the link right here, create a new React app. We hit that, scroll down, there's the command. So I'm going to read through it real quick. Create React app is a comfortable environment for learning React, and this is the best way to start building a new single-page React application. Now, they said it's a great way, but it's not the only way, and it's definitely not a limitation. You can start with a single page and then kind of build other pages and route them together. That's completely fine. You can do whatever you want, man. No one's judging, all right? Knowing that we have Node and NPM installed, we simply run npx create react app, create react app my-app. It probably is going to error. I hope it doesn't, but it probably will because I have a very old version of Node installed here and I didn't update it. But anyway, it doesn't matter because we're not really going to start development in this tutorial. What we're going to do is install these dependencies. So you should probably read through these things. There we go. See, it says npx installed. You are running Node 10.19. Create React app requires Node 14 or higher. Please update Node version. So I'm gonna do apt get. Actually, I need to sudo apt get update. Oh yeah, I forgot sudo apt update. apt-get was the old way of doing things in Ubuntu. Now it just uses apt without the get. Sudo apt upgrade. Alright, sudo npm. Actually, node-v. We're still on 10.19. Alright, let's do this the old-fashioned way. NodeJS update version. Ubuntu. How do we update? NVM. All right. NVM is Node Version Manager. Node Version Manager allows you to install multiple versions of Node and select whatever version you want to use. It's available for Mac, Linux, and Windows. And the reason you would want something like this is because there are times where you would be developing in a old application of Node, and then a business requirement comes in that says, you know what, there are some security updates in version 20,000,000.5. So you would want to use that for another project, but your old project might break on this new Node version, especially if you haven't tested it. And that's where NVM comes in. NVM allows you to have multiple versions, switch between them, and have less of a headache. Now, ideally, you would also always try to want to upgrade your old applications to the latest one, but in some cases, you might not be able to. Sudo apt install curl. All right. Curl does a lot. Basically, curl does the same thing as wget. It goes to a link, retrieves the file, installs it. But sometimes it's better to use curl because it shows you download progress, especially for bigger files. It's a lot more reliable than wget. Right. Alternatively, blah blah blah. This is see. It's over here. It's telling us that you can use curl or you can use wget. Because this was a small file, doesn't matter. We installed curl. We got it. It's all good. All right, and we're back. So we've downloaded the files required for NVM to run. What we're going to do now is source bash rc, and we're going to go with NVM version. There we go. We have NVM. Now, NVM ls remote. What this does is it goes to Node Version Manager, lists all of the remote versions available, and tells us which ones are available for us to use. Now, I would always recommend using the latest LTS in any version. You can experiment with these because the reason they keep them is for the same reason I told you earlier. There are dependent applications on older versions, and you can go all the way back to one of the earliest versions, if not the earlier version. Yep, see? That's the beauty of open source. There's a history of everything. They're always watching you. Now, what we're going to do is nvm install version, actually v16.14.2. Enter. Sip some coffee. Done. Node-v. There we go. We're good to go. Now, if we go to npx, create React app, my app. You need to install the following packages. Okay. Yep. Definitely. Go for it. More coffee. All right. So it's installing packages. It's saying that it might take a couple of minutes. It's going to install React, React DOM, React scripts, and CRA templates. I don't want you to worry too much about this. CRA templates are create React app templates. React scripts are scripts built into the React library. React DOM is the document object model controller. Again, don't worry too much about it now. We are going to get into them later. Once you're done, you're pretty much good to go. All right. And with that, I'm going to end this episode. I know I threw a lot of information at you, and this was a lot lengthier than I expected. Now, that's fine. We now have NodeJS installed. We have MongoDB installed. We have ReactJS installed. In the next episode, we're going to install Express and create our first server. I'm very happy that you made it this far. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll try to respond as soon as I'm available. And really, I appreciate you going through this journey with me. It's going to be an exciting one. I'm all out of coffee, so I have to stop. It's a rule. Sorry. All right. Hope to see you in the next one. Very happy that you made it this far, and good luck.